Chapter 66. Jen. Hugging Aunt Chevy is like clasping a lost piece of my mother. It brings tears to my eyes. "It's been too long," she says, surveying me, Katie and Dad and shaking her head. She looks impossibly youthful, given that she's into her 60s. Her skin is smooth over her cheeks, unwrinkled. She wears long silver pendant earrings and a mustard-coloured scarf. Her eyes dance just like my mother's. In the car on the way back from the airport, she has us laughing within 10 minutes with anecdotes of the flight. If she had a Jamaican lilt she learnt from my grandparents, it's blossomed now that she's lived out there for 20 years. "Nothing changes," she says, looking at the rain, illuminated under the bright motorway lights. It's dark and the wipers are squeaking back and forth. "It's weird, the things you miss." Katie smiles across at me. We're sat in the back like when we were kids. She's sleeping in my room tonight, so Aunt Chevy can have her bed. It feels good to see her in person, not just on video call. "Does Jamaica feel like home now?" Dad asks. Aunt Chevy laughs dryly. "In some ways," she replies. "But I was born here. I grew up here, with British friends, though people always asked me where I was from. They were surprised when I said Bedford." "Do you still have friends there?" Dad asks. "We can visit." "That would be a trip down memory lane." Aunt Chevy turns round to smile at us. "Do you remember Sundays at Zion Hill?" "I remember the food," Katie says. "Oh yes," Aunt Chevy agrees. "Sometimes I think old David used to shout hallelujah so loud just to make Dad finish his sermon a bit quicker." "And the fact that he was too hard of hearing to know what he was saying anyway," Katie giggles. "He's probably with the Lord now," Aunt Chevy says with a sigh. "I'm an oldie now." I feel a stab of jealousy that Aunt Chevy gets to grow old and my mother's life was cut off so abruptly. It's odd how she is immortalised forever now, in her prime. "Thanks for having me to stay," Aunt Chevy says, mainly to Dad. "It's no trouble," he says, clearing his throat. "Look at you two, all grown up." She turns round again. "Your mum would be so proud of you." I stare out of the window at the streaming rain. Later in my bedroom, Katie takes over my bed, wearing oversized pink pyjamas. "Are you glad she's here?" she asks me. "Yes," I reply, then pause. It doesn't change how I feel towards Mum, but it feels like a missing thread that wasn't there last time. "You mean at the funeral?" I nod. We don't ever talk about it. "It's good to have more family," she says. "Why don't you ask her to help you plan your summer trip? You still want to go out to Jamaica, right?" "Yes, but it's hard to think about it right now. I just want to get through the next 24 hours. I wake up and I already feel like I'm crying because I dreamed about her. That kind where you feel a tangible presence of someone being there and you feel comforted. She didn't say anything, only smiled. But then, when I wake up, the cruel contrast of loss burns me with the bitterness of the wind blowing a bonfire's smoke into your eyes. I want to sob, but Katie's there, so I haul myself out of bed and head downstairs. Aunt Chevy is already sat at the table with a cup of tea. "Ah," she clucks with her tongue as I hover in the doorway. "You sit down and I'll make you one." She clicks the kettle on and shuffles around, already seeming at home as she finds me a mug and a tea bag. She comes over and places a hand on my shoulder. I crumple, and then she's holding me against her, tighter and tighter as I let myself cry. It's been 10 years of being the strong one, 10 years of looking after Dad and Katie, and finally it feels like there's someone to look after me. "You shouldn't have had to go through this on your own," Aunt Chevy says. "I'm sorry I couldn't be here when you needed me." She makes my cup of tea, then sits next to me at the table. "When Pearl turned up, I asked her what she was playing at. 'Go home,' I said. 'You got to think of the girls.' But she was in a bad place. She didn't know who she was or what to do. She kept going off with people, parties on the beach. I got a call from her one day. She was stranded and confused and needed me to go find her. I had to miss work. I lost my job. I told her she had to put herself together. Go to the doctor. I thought they would give her some antidepressants. But they found a tumour. I hold the mug, out of habit more than anything else, and feel the familiar churn of emotions when I think about this. Now you really have to go home, I said. Aunt Chevy continues. She had no money. I had some savings, but there was only enough for one ticket. I bought it for her, and she came back. You know the rest. I was searching and searching for a new job, and I finally got one. It was just before she died. I didn't have any money left to fly over here myself for her funeral. Even if I did, I couldn't ask for time off when I'd only just started the job. As time went on, it was hard to stay in touch. But this anniversary, I thought, enough is enough. I had built up my savings again, and I knew it was time to come back. I'm so glad you did. I take her hand. I was so wrong about everything, so wrong to judge her. That's a pretty ring, she says, noticing my engagement ring. I'm getting married in April, I tell her. My heart twinges. Maybe this is my chance to start clawing back some Baker territory in the Chase-dominated guest list. Why don't you extend your stay so you can come? I ask. I'll look into it, she promises. I need to get in touch with the church and see who's still around. It would mean a lot to me, I add. Initially, I'm saying this without really thinking about what I mean, but as I consider it through the day, the idea becomes more and more significant. If Aunt Chevy comes, someone from my mother's side of the family is there, someone who's not white, who represents the Jamaican part of my identity, admittedly not something I've massively explored yet. Why should my wedding look like an upper-middle-class networking event? And to add to this, one of the first things Aunt Chevy does is to offer to braid my hair properly in cornrows. It's perfect timing because it will protect my hair for the next few weeks before the hen do and the wedding. Katie's keen to join in, so we spend the morning in the lounge together, using oils and laughing at rubbish TV shows, while Aunt Chevy braids our hair with amazing rapidity. You've let this go for far too long, she scolds, tutting at my knotted mass of hair, looking frayed and brittle. I hope you're wearing a silk cap every night and oiling it. I wince, thinking of all the times I've slept over Michael's parents' house and forgotten to pack one. If you're here for the wedding, can you do our hair? Katie asks. I got no credentials, Aunt Chevy laughs. I can't do anything fancy. I don't want fancy, I say, but I need someone who understands how to style my hair. No use getting a white hairdresser then, Aunt Chevy says definitively. If I'm here, I'll do it. In the afternoon, Dad drives us over to the cemetery. It has a bleak outlook over the railway line, and the tightly packed graveyard stones look like an optical illusion. It's raining again, and my life feels like it's in sepia. The greyness and gloom penetrate everything. As we trudge across the car park, Michael's waiting, dressed in his long winter coat and holding a black umbrella. He could be an actor in a Dickensian period drama. I take his arm and lead the way to my mother's memorial. It's a modest stone with her name on it, the year of her death a sharply etched reminder of the worst time of my life. Katie lays down some flowers, and we stand there, getting wet in the rain. Me, Michael, Dad, Katie, and Aunt Chevy. I can't speak for the others, but if I'm honest with myself, I'm grieving more of what I wanted my mother to be than the reality of who she was. Mourning the loss of the mother I wanted. We're all crying except Michael, who pulls a plastic wallet out of his coat. I brought a poem if you'd like me to read it, he says to me. Incapable of speech, I nod. He reads, Nature's first green is gold, her hardest hue to hold. Her early leaf's a flower, but only so an hour. Then leaf subsides to leaf, so Eden sank to grief. So dawn goes down to day. Nothing gold can stay. In that moment, I love him more than ever.